along with singing Madam Butterfly on the Cook's Night Out. Actually, one thing we are going to do is talk about the architecture that we found in the various places we went. And for those of you who are musical, The King and I, if you're familiar with that musical, the King of Siam was a real person, and you see the architecture in Thailand that his children came back from their studies abroad and built based on European styles. So we're going to show some of the architecture in Thailand and how they brought back from their studies various ideas from Europe and then put Thai roofs on these very French colonial buildings or European style buildings. It's quite interesting. So I hope you will come on the 26th and buy your tickets today in Fellowship Hall. So today we're starting a new journey together, learning about the Enneagram. It is an aid for self-knowledge, but also for spiritual guidance, which comes from Sufism, which is the mystical tradition within Islam. It also comes from Judaism and from Christianity. The desert mothers and fathers of the 4th century used it for spiritual counseling, and it's full of wisdom for people who want to kind of get out of their own way and become who they were created by God to be. How many of you knew about the Enneagram before this sermon series came up? Okay, a few, yes, wonderful. And how many of you have taken the test? Oh, excellent, I'm so excited. So John Calvin is quoted to say, "Without knowledge of self, there is no knowledge of God." The Enneagram takes its name from the Greek words for 9, ennea, and figure, gram. It's a 9-pointed geometric figure that illustrates 9 different but interconnected personality types. There is a fascinating progression of mathematical thought over the centuries that actually helped to create this figure. But that's outside of my scope today. So if you're a math nerd, you may want to explore the number system behind the Enneagram. Many psychologists and theologians believe that the Enneagram is an excellent tool for helping people on our way to intellectual and spiritual growth. Of course, there are many other great personality typing systems like the Myers-Briggs or the 5-factor test. But these are psychological in orientation. And unlike these, the Enneagram combines both theological and spiritual along with the psychological understandings. The true purpose of the Enneagram, according to author Ian Crone, and I quote, is to reveal your shadow side and to offer spiritual counsel on how to open it up to transformative light of grace. Isn't that beautiful? All of us have a shadow side, but the Enneagram helps us to open that shadow side up to God's transformative grace. In fact, the Enneagram is concerned with not only affirming who you are, but also helping you make a turnaround on some of the things that are the shadow side of your personality. It confronts us with our compulsions and self-imposed laws under which we live, even though we may not be aware of it, and it invites us to go beyond that shadow side into a life of freedom. Sound good so far? You're excited, I can tell. Now, some of you are looking at the back of your bulletin at the website where you take the test, and I'm seeing the phones, and you're doing it on your phone. Okay, that's fine if you want to. I'm actually following 3 books to prepare for this sermon series. Richard Rohr's Discovering the Enneagram is our principal source. In fact, our church Facebook post this week, Rohr's niece, who lives in the neighborhood behind the church, saw our sign and contacted us and said she was very excited about this sermon series. She is not a member, nor has she ever come here, but she said she was going to show up here during this series. In addition, I'm using the book The Road Back to You by Crone and Stabile and The Sacred Enneagram by Huertz. Now, if you look at the front of your bulletin, you will see one version of the Enneagram. The Sufi called this the face of God. So if you've ever wanted to know what God looks like, there it is. No. Because of the 9 points of energy, they saw 9 refractions of one divine love. Okay? Each week we're going to look at a different type, and I would encourage you, perhaps not at this moment, but sometime, to take the Enneagram test. It's referenced on the back of your bulletin, the website where you can go to take it, and then it will send you back, hopefully, an email with your type indicator. Most of us are one specific type, but we have a wing type that's secondary or third in our personality. We're going today to look at the perfectionist or the reformer, number 1. Number 1s are idealists. They're driven with a deep longing for a world of truth and justice and moral order. They are honest and fair. They are often gifted leaders, but they have a hard time accepting their own and other people's imperfections. These are people who lose their mind when there's a typo on something that's published or public. In one church I served, there was an English teacher who took a red pen to the bulletin every week and thought she was really helping by laying it on the secretary's desk. These are people who will straighten a picture that is slightly askew, even if it's in someone else's house. And this is a telltale sign, I'm telling you. They will reload the dishes in the dishwasher if someone loaded them incorrectly. Some of you are looking to your spouse. When our daughter Erin was about 7 years old, she said something one day when we were in the car. Now, I don't remember what it was that she said, but it was incorrect. Remember, she was 7. It wasn't a moral issue. It wasn't even an opinion. It was something very benign. But she had her facts wrong. So I corrected her, just so she would know it was no big deal. But that is when the trouble started. She was absolutely furious that I corrected her. She yelled at me. She threw a big fit. This was unlike her usually. I could not imagine why this was such a big deal. And I tried to reassure her. This is not important. I simply want you to know the facts. When we got home, she was still so livid that I sent her to her room. I was very specific that she was not being punished for being wrong or saying something incorrect, that she was in trouble for being so angry about it. And I told her she could come out of her room when she had calmed down. Time passed, a half an hour, an hour. I kept waiting for her to come downstairs. I wanted the whole thing to be over. Finally, I figured out after 2 hours that she had probably fallen asleep. She hadn't made a peep. So I knocked on her door and I gently went in. She was sitting on her bed. And I could tell from her face she was just as angry, if not more so, than she had been in the car. I sat down beside her. What in the world has gotten into you? I asked. It's really not that big a deal, Aaron. You didn't make a mistake on purpose, and there's no way you could have known the fact. I don't understand why you're so mad. Mom, she said. I could tell she thought I was totally ridiculous and that the whole thing was my fault. If I made a mistake, it was only because you had never told me about this. I am 7 years old and you never told me. This is all your fault. Parents are supposed to teach their children these things. Now, like I said, the topic of this issue was absolutely non-important. I later quipped, "Oh yes, by the age of 7, everything I had to teach my child should have already been imparted." Aaron's picture is in the Enneagram book as a quintessential type 1. They see the possibility for perfection in themselves, in others, and in the systems and structures they're a part of. They make great leaders. However, the spiritual issue for type 1s is that they often struggle with anger, mom, or resentment. Ones believe that the world judges people who don't follow the rules, control their emotions, behave appropriately, and keep their basic animal instincts in check. So for ones, anger tops the list of feelings that good people shouldn't express. And what that means is they bury the anger they feel until it expresses itself to everyone else in resentment that smolders inside of them. I will tell you, I'll be this rough on every type category, because the point is to affirm who you are and the possibilities of goodness, but also to examine the possibilities of growth areas. Ones are hard on themselves, and they're hard on the people they live with. They don't necessarily think that they are being critical, actually. They think in their own minds that they're trying to help you become better. And that's because they believe that they occupy the superior moral, ethical, and spiritual life. They have a merciless inner critic, and it never goes away. So in addition, they keep a mental list of all the things that they need to do. An illustration that Ian Crone uses about a type 1 made me laugh out loud. He says that ones believe every task should be done in a systematic and correct fashion. And when they read the directions to assemble a recently purchased item, a grill, for example, and those directions say, don't do anything until you make sure you have all the necessary parts. You know, that's in the fine print above the directions. The people who are in 1, they set out all the screws, all the nuts, all the bolts, and they count them. And they won't put the grill together if so much as a bolt is missing. This is the time you look at your spouse again. I'm actually glad that there are ones in our lives, because I want them to design the brake system on my car. I want them to fill my prescriptions properly. I want them to fly the plane that I'm on. I want them to design the programs and the systems I use. Ones make great attorneys and politicians and military personnel and teachers. Now, the idea of the Enneagram is not to change any person from the type that they are. It's to celebrate the gifts each person has, and then to recognize the traps that those people can fall into. It's to help each of us learn and grow into more spiritual, healthy lives and patterns. So ones, along with the rest of us, I think, have to learn that there isn't just one right way. They also have to learn how to manage their anger without passing such severe judgment on themselves and others. They have to work on not taking themselves too seriously, and they need to learn to play. So if you're married or living with a child or an adult who is a 1, one thing you can do to be a good spouse or parent is help them learn to play. These are their spiritual challenges: to forgive themselves and others, to control their anger and learn to accept criticism, and it is a lifetime task for a 1 to occasionally ignore duty and order and the improvement of the world so that they can just celebrate and enjoy their lives. And finally, 1s need to remember, and this is the spiritual part, that they are beloved children of God. They don't have to earn someone else's love. As Anna Quindlen said, the thing that is really hard and really amazing is giving up on being perfect and beginning the work of becoming yourself. Some famous 1s are Jerry Seinfeld, Nelson Mandela, Hillary Clinton, Steve Jobs. Can you think why some of those public personas fit into this category? You'll find a list of what it's like to be a 1 in your bulletin. Does anyone want to say, this fits me at least somewhat? I'm going to guess that we have a good representation in our congregation of 1s. And some of you, of course, are married to them or work with them or have close friends that are there. And if you do, or you are, the best thing you can do for a 1 is to show them God's unconditional love. Actually, that's the best thing you can do for yourself and everyone. Without doing anything to earn it, or prove it, or make it happen, God's unconditional love is present in all of our lives. It's a lesson we all need and a practice we can all embrace. 1 John 4:18 is our traditional word today, and this is a power-packed verse. There is no fear in love, but perfect love, God's love, casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. The message for all of us is this: you are enough. God made you and has said, as God says for all of creation, it is good. This is a deep and seldom fully understood theological concept. God loves and accepts you as you are. You are enough. Remember the movie The Wizard of Oz? Dorothy and Toto are swept away in a Kansas tornado. They end up on the yellow brick road. The Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow join them on a journey to Oz. And each of the characters is looking for something: a brain, a heart, courage. What they learn when they get to Oz is that they had it all along. The wizard can't create what they were looking for and give it to them. He simply reminds them that they already have what they needed. They were enough. They were whole already. They were not perfect, but they were whole. May it be for each of us too. Amen.